Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. The guy opposite me is Tim, and this is The Second Legacy, and thank you for stopping by. Today, we're going to dive into something that is becoming quite the brouhaha in our industry, this whole Liberty Safe thing. This is a situation, and what's funny about the entire thing is when you go into a problem area and you start kicking over rocks, you start finding all sorts of creepy crawlies, and that is what we're going to walk through right now. Everything will be linked in the description box below, and please make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help the channel grow. Thank you so much for that. And now, Tim, you know, normally I ask how you're feeling, but I'm just going to say, do you feel safe?
Considering I have Liberty Safes,
It's a Liberty?
Liberty. Well, my saving grace is I didn't share secret information with them. So anyway,
oh man,
we'll get into that.
We're gonna crack this so open. We're gonna Kool-Aid man this bad boy. Well, beautiful people of the Second Legacy, if you are not familiar, there's quite the growing controversy going on right now around Liberty Safes and the FBI, a warrant, and providing codes of safes of customers at the behest of the FBI. Now, there are so many pieces of this, and we're going to dive in and make sure you let us know what you guys think in the comments field, because this is rife for conversation. Is this just business as usual and it's going to be a situation for a little while, or is this a straight-up secure version of Bud Light? That is what we're going to get into. So, you know, before we hit the absolute details here, Tim, what's your initial gut reaction? When this went down, what was your initial thought?
Well, so when it first happened, basically, well, let's set it up so people know what we're talking about. We had a gentleman by the name of Nathan Hughes who was recently arrested for participating in some way at the J6 protest. And he happens to be friends with the Hodge twins, and they're the ones that broke the news, and that's where I had first seen it, was on their Twitter feed. And so this is a guy that the FBI was investigating. 2.5 years after J6, they arrested him and took his girlfriend, I guess, into custody. And then they had a warrant, presumably. And then they went to Liberty Safe and said, hey, we have this warrant. Can you give us an access code to the safe? And they complied. So that's where we find ourselves today, right? And so when I first saw it, I was thinking, why in the world does Liberty Safe have backdoor access codes? I mean, I can understand why for testing purposes and things like that. I'm not naive to how, programming and software and stuff like that works. But, why would they even tell an outside source they even have such a thing? And that was kind of curious to me. But then it turns out that apparently when you register your safe, you have the option of telling Liberty Safe what your code that you came up with, what it is. So if you forget or lose that code, they can supply it to you once you prove who you are. And that apparently is what happened here. They supplied Nathan's own code back to the FBI. Well, not back to the FBI.
Well, to the FBI,
and that's how they got into his safe. So when I first learned of that, I was like, and I made a comment on Twitter, like, why in the world would they even have this code and make it available, even tell law enforcement? It turns out, well, it's his own supplied code, and now they're presumably complying with a warrant. But that's where we're going to go next, I think.
Right. No. That's at the high level.
Yes.
But now let's get into actual principle. Because I want to touch on one thing that you said, because I think this is an important part of the conversation. It makes sense to me why Liberty would need the codes in case of customer request, right? So from a stance of, hey, I lost my code, I can't get in. Hey, can you validate who you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Go through the process steps. And then you were provided the code to get back into your valuables. I understand that approach. However, there's an interesting piece, and you brought this up in our pre-show discussion. There's a difference between having that information, not telling the customer when they buy it, versus the customer supplying it to the company for safekeeping. I think that's an excellent point, because yes, is there a valuable aspect to having it somewhere else, just in case? Yes, 100%. But does that make it vulnerable without your permission to things like warrants from the FBI, which they don't even have to comply with? They are not forced. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a court order going against Liberty. This was a warrant for an individual, and they volunteered the information. So I don't know. What's your take on that piece? Because that I think gets down to a big important part.
Sure. So you have a history with Apple, and you know their internal policies pretty well.
Yep.
And we've all seen the news stories where Apple has been contacted by law enforcement saying, "Hey, we want to get into this suspected person's phone and get information out. We have a warrant," and Apple just goes, go pound sand. We're not going to give you anything. Take us to court, and we'll see how that plays out. So complying with a warrant as a third party isn't a requirement. Very rarely you're going to get drug into the courts. Not to say you can't, but it's like in this case, I think what would have happened if Liberty had said, sorry, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't have any codes. Then the FBI just simply would have cut the safe open, right? And they're not going to go after Liberty and drag this out for months in court, like while the safe sits in his house and they're just got it cordoned off so nobody can access it until they can drag Liberty to the courts. That's not how that's going to play out. They're going to go, oh, you don't want to help us? No. Fine, we'll remember that. We're vindictive. We'll talk to you later. And then they'll just go cut the safe open. And so, and then that brings up a whole different thing. And we can sit back and armchair quarterback this. Liberty may have just fell into this, by accident, or by, some employee did this and now they're trying to cover for. I don't really know the backstory there. We'd have to make a lot of assumptions. Yeah. But it just seems to me like the easy thing for Liberty to have done, what they should have done in light of all this, is just said, hey guys, look, when you buy the safe and you register it, we give you the option of giving us your passcode, and then we'll just keep that for you. But just know that it can be hacked, just like a credit card number. If we get served with a warrant, we're going to be compelled to hand that information over. Just so you know, this is optional. If you want us to keep it, understand that. If you don't want us to keep it, fine, we won't keep it. And then had they done that, that would have changed the outcome of this. Or had Liberty taken the tact that when the FBI contacted them and said, hey, we want this information, and they said, hey, we're not going to give it to you, take us to court, and then the FBI cut the safe open, then Liberty came back in and said, hey, they cut this guy's safe open, here's a new safe. Imagine how that would have played, right? So there's so many different other avenues that this could have played out in, but it just seems like somebody within the company made a bad choice. And my gut tells me this isn't their first rodeo. They've given information to law enforcement before. The only reason this one came out is because of the Hodge twins, because of the J6 connection. It's controversial. It's newsworthy, and that's how this came out. So I suspect they figured it'd be just like any other time. We don't know that they've done it, but I'm suspecting that any other time they just thought, well, we've done this 1,000 times before. Here you go, FBI, go away, and then boom, it blew up in their face this time.
100%. Again, just to be crystal clear on 2 points. One, we are talking about what could have done to prevent this situation. We're not saying that this is okay or not okay yet, because it's about to get real gross. But the other piece here is if they had not had this situation occur, they would have no reason for a policy. And that's an important thing, because on their Twitter feed, Tim, they consistently came out and they said, no, we're all in the good. Don't be upset at us, because this is our policy. Well, if you have a policy, that means a situation has arisen before where you need a policy for it.
Yep.
And again, going back to what you just said, I worked for Apple for 10 years. Apple would never release the passcode for iPhones, ever. FBI says we need this? Nope. FBI says we're going to sue you? Apple goes, okay. Anyway, carry on. Have you seen the new iPhone coming out? Genuinely, that just would not happen. Yeah. And in my own personal case here, my own personal opinion, what Liberty should have done here, specifically since their base core clientele is a gun-owning clientele, they should have said, no, that's not a warrant for us. That's not a court order for us. That's not going to happen. Now, that's my own take on it. They should not have complied on this. Not because there was a warrant or wasn't a warrant, but because this is a violation of privacy. And you did not inform people that you had the codes to do this when they bought the safes. I think that's the big crux of the issue where people are so furious.
Yeah.
Is because had the FBI gone through and cut this safe open, that's completely different. Completely. Because now the FBI took force and said, fine, Liberty, you're not helping us. Like you said, we'll remember that. We're going to cut the safe open. Liberty opened the door for themselves there and goes, hey, perfect marketing opportunity. But when they started to do these types of decisions and have their policy and lean back on their policy so quickly, people start asking questions, and they start kicking rocks. And wouldn't you know what they find, Tim? Because this is where it gets really gross and does not look good for Liberty, at least in my opinion. But you know what? You guys let us know in the comments field. So, of course, I'm going to reference a tweet from Charlie Kirk real quick. Mr. Producer, this is number one. This is interesting. Let's just go into this here. Liberty Safe was sold to Monomoy Capital Partners in 2021, a liberal East Coast investment firm. I pulled the FEC reports on the company and found approximately $400,000 over the last 10 cycles of max donations for Democrats like Raphael Warnock, John Fetterman, Mandela Barnes, Mark Kelly. Liberty Safe's current CEO, Justin Hillenbrand, was a founding partner of Monomoy and donated $4,600 to Obama for America. And we're supposed to be surprised they betrayed their customers to the FBI as quickly as humanly possible. Now, again, those are Charlie Kirk's words. What they provided after that, and this is something that he linked. This is I think such an important point, Tim. Number 2, Mr. Producer. Here's the list, Tim, of all the Democrats that they contributed to with dates. Now, I'm going to run down this list, and I'm just going to, if you guys are not familiar, I'm just going to narrate a few things here. Tim Ryan for Ohio, lost, Democrat. Maggie Hassan for New Hampshire, Democrat. Susan Wild for Congress, Democrat. Angie Craig, Democrat. Catherine Cortez Masto for Senate, Democrat. Fetterman, obviously Democrat who can't talk. Stevens, Democrat. Warnock. Ooh, look at that. He's a senator, Democrat. Steve Irwin twice. David Cicilline committee. He's the guy who was in the House and said, spare me the BS about your constitutional rights. That's a Jim. Mandela Barnes for Wisconsin, Senate candidate. Mark Kelly for Senate. Husband to Gabby Giffords, Democrat. So when you're looking at that, Tim, this kind of adds some color and context to what we're talking about, and it doesn't look good when you're looking at the policies and the outcomes.
You know, here... Now look, it's normal for companies to give donations to political candidates. They have to because they're trying to protect their interests. And many times this will cross over from, so what we don't see in this post, there could have been donations to Republicans. I don't know. This is coming from a guy that I see posting all the time, and he's very conservative. So this may be just him showing the Democrat donations and he isn't showing the Republican ones. I don't know if that even occurred. So it's not uncommon for companies to do this. However, when your company is engaged in the business of selling to the Second Amendment community, who is very, very particular, and they know this, is very particular about their rights, very particular about the anti-gun Democrats that are constantly trying to take their property from them. When you donate to hardcore anti-gunners, which is what they've done here, there are some names in there. These are people who are staunchly anti-gun, and they've donated to them. Yeah. Now, there's a problem, right? I understand donating to some representatives on both sides. I understand companies why they would want to do that. But boy, you better be careful who you donate to. If you're engaged in a particular business and you donate to the campaign of somebody that's opposed to that particular business, that's a problem potentially, and that's what looks ugly here and why they have egg on their face.
I think
if this is true,
face was when the policy. Right. Yeah, of course. Again,
I didn't create the list.
We did not publish this.
Yes.
Right, we're going off of information that was released.
Supplied by somebody else. So if true.
Supplied by somebody else. Right. So the big thing here, I think the egg on our face moment was when it first got released and, this looks bad for Liberty Safe. I think that was when you had egg, and it was a lot of egg on your face. When you have this kind of information coming out afterwards, I think we've gone beyond egg on our face to being like pulling the mask down. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on a second. You market directly to Second Amendment advocates as your staple consumer, the occasional purse collector, of course. But you've got valuables in these things. You've got a list of your codes. You are willing to hand it to the FBI if they have a warrant, not for you, but for somebody else. And this is your list of political donations. I'm seeing a trend here.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
No, that's a bad look.
That's bad. I mean, like, to your point, freaking Fetterman?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Mark Kelly, Mandela Barnes, like David Cicilline, these are staunch anti-gunners.
Yes.
Like this isn't even like, they're fence sitters, they're purple states. No, these are far left, call for the abolition of the Second Amendment Democrats.
Yep.
Oh, this is not good.
Yeah. So when that information came out, I think that's more damaging than. Connected to this recent event, the two together make it really, really ugly. But this alone, had this came out beforehand, would have been ugly on its own. But now this is like the perfect storm for Liberty Safes right now because this is not going to play well in our community. And I understand why people would be angry about it. I mean, I even said on Twitter, I don't think I'm going to buy a Liberty Safe if I have to buy a new safe in the future. And And that's just because, I'm not calling for a boycott. There's a difference there. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy from Liberty. I'm just saying my personal decision is I'm going to take a look at some other brands. I've been a loyal Liberty customer for decades. My very first safe, I knew to go to them because they were known in the industry as being a great American company that, supported the Second Amendment, and they made outstanding safes for a good, fair price. And so I supported them all these years. And now when this comes out, it just kind of makes you think, well, maybe I should take a look at some of the competition. And what's ironic about this is when things like this happen, the competition will typically market on the backs of such controversy. And that's precisely what happened. I saw that posted on Twitter.
God, I would. In fact, we have it here.
Yes.
Check this out. Mr. Producer number 4, let me read this for the people. This is from Secure-It. Again, no brand endorsements, just an example here. Recently, Secure-It was made aware of and asked to comment on the situation involving the FBI and a well-known safe manufacturer. By the way, just pause for a second. This is totally like siblings being like, hey, Mom, I noticed my one of my other brothers did not clean his room sufficiently. I just would like to let you know that I did. Anyway, just like
Aaron. Without saying the name,
Exactly. So let's continue, though. Sorry. The FBI requested the access code to the safe of an individual for whom they have a warrant to search their property. Their company protocol is to provide these access codes to law enforcement if a warrant grants them access to a property. It is Secure-It's belief and protocol that the protection of personal property and Second Amendment rights of American citizens is paramount. Our full line of fast access modular safes are not built with any override system, giving our customers full control. The freedom and liberty to possess firearms is the right of every American citizen. Secure-It will always put those same rights of our current and future customers first. That is such a backhanded stab in the eye, and it's so beautiful. But like, if they're gonna make their own mess like this, these guys are jumping right on it.
It's common, right, for companies to market. Yeah. I mean, we saw the same thing happen with Bud Light. We saw their competitors starting to market on their missteps, right? So it's not uncommon to see this. But what this does do is helps drive a point home through the community that, hey, first of all, we're going to stick together. And secondly, we do take our security seriously. And, companies that sell to us need to understand that's part of our culture. And it seems really remiss to me that Liberty would not have at least one person on staff that lives in social media, that lives and breathes the Second Amendment, walks in the circles we walk in, so they can give them solid advice on policies. Because when you don't have gun people running gun companies or businesses related to gun companies, this is the type of folly you find yourself in. Because I see it all the time. I see it in the industry. It goes back just a very simple but famous example of engaging with companies to help a gun company, market. Well, remember when H&K contracted out the photo shoot to a pistol, and this company doesn't know anything about the Second Amendment, doesn't know anything about firearms. They loaded the rounds backwards into the magazine, and nobody caught it, and it went out, got printed, and created quite the, I wouldn't say controversy, but it was pretty comical, and it still gets play, 30 years later. You see pictures floating around the internet. So that's an example of what happens when you engage with companies that don't really understand the community. And that's what Liberty Safe fell into here. I think they're more concerned about just selling safes, and they lost sight of the fact that they're catering to a community that takes their individual liberty and security very, very seriously.
Right. They lost sight of the mission of their company, and they focused on the what. They didn't focus on the why they were doing it. They focused on how many safes they can sell.
Yeah.
When you do something like this is catastrophic to a brand that is in a very patriotic niche of the market, particularly when people don't buy safes all the time. These are big purchases. If you have a how do I say this? A mark against your brand, and it's a negative taste in the mouth of consumers, it's not long until your cash flow starts to dry a little bit. I mean, because these are high-ticket items, and I don't know, dude. Like, this does not look good at all for Liberty Safes. I mean, I think it really comes down to exactly what you said. It's the why. And you got to have somebody involved in at least the gun industry, the gun world, and know what they're talking about before they just crack off and make these policies and then try to hide behind them as they're justified.
Well, that's just it. So their policy, just so we haven't talked about what their original policy was. So I'll read this out really quick. On August 30th, 2023, Liberty Safe was contacted by the FBI requesting the access code to the safe of an individual for whom they had a warrant to search their property. Our company protocol is to provide access to codes provide access codes to law enforcement if a warrant grants them access to a property. After receiving the request, we received proof of the valid warrant, and only then did we provide them with an access code. Liberty Safe had no knowledge of any of the details surrounding the investigation at the time. Liberty Safe is devoted to protecting the personal property, the Second Amendment rights of our customers, and has repeatedly denied requests for access codes without a warrant in the past. We do not give out our combinations without proper legal documentation being provided to the authorities. So right there they said that they have done this in the past, but if you don't have a warrant, we won't give it to you, implying that if you do, we will. And as we've already discussed, they're not under any real threat of having to comply with these warrants. They'll more than likely just be, if they say no, they'll just go cut the safe open, and there you go. And maybe after they do that a few times, they'll just stop asking. So anyway, but then they But then they updated it, right? So after this big flap, after all the social media posts, maybe a day later, they changed their policy. Okay, so to Braden's point, they knew about it because they set a policy. They admit pretty much to that in their original policy statement. Now that they've caught the blowback, now they've updated that policy. So here we go with the update. We listen to our customers and update our products and practices in response to their evolving needs. There's nothing evolving about our needs. They're pretty well known. Today, we are announcing a change that empowers our customers with greater control over their information. Effective immediately, existing customers can visit, libertysafes.com/combination removal and fill out the form to have records of their access codes expunged. In the coming weeks, we'll be releasing a feature that gives every new customer this option when they're registering their safes. So this goes to my earlier point. They didn't even they didn't do this. They didn't even admit to this. They didn't talk about this. This has been ongoing.
Correct.
But you as the customer, myself included, never knew they would do this because they didn't say they would. This should have been known because they obviously had the policy, so they knew this stuff takes place. So they should have told their customers, hey, just so you know, if you give us the code, we may be compelled to give it away, or it could be hacked or anything else, as I brought up earlier. So it just, I'm glad they made the update, but under the circumstances where it happened, it seems like they fumbled a bit, which is the unfortunate reality that we see, happen in the community time and time again.
So now this is the interesting part, because I think it was so good that you brought the first one in, and then you brought the updated version in very quickly, because this is growing pretty fast. I don't think this is going to go away quickly. But when you have a policy, as we mentioned earlier, and that's your standard, and you operate in that way, and you just don't tell people until you get caught, and then you change the policy, well, you're retroactively changing a policy of which you knew your clientele would not approve of, but because there's light on it, now all of a sudden the policy changes. That policy should have been in place the entire time, and it should have been in the owner's packet. Had it been there, Liberty could go, no. Everything that you have and everything you see is right here. It's in the owner's manual per this date. You have the ability to expunge your codes and your safe codes. You have all of this ability for safety and protocols to protect yourself, but they didn't do it until they got caught. And I think, to me, that is a very large problem. And I think this is now spinning beyond just, hey, that was a bad policy and you shouldn't have done this. Now it's turning into, so you betrayed us a little bit, and then people are looking into their donating habits and go, oh, wait a minute, now you're really betraying us. What else are we going to find when we kick over a few more rocks? Because where there's smoke, there's fire. And that, I think that is a really big piece of what we're dealing with. Now, to their credit, and I will fully say to their credit, I think that they are petrified of a Bud Light effect on their bottom line, and they, unlike Bud Light, they changed course. They did. They changed their policy. They said, okay, we really got caught. And they changed their policy. Now, my question would be, and this is where you guys can let us know in the comments field, is this too little too late? Or do you think that this is going to make anything? I mean, what's your natural gut reaction, Tim? Do you think too little too late? Or do you think, oh, this is going to get real messy?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to get really messy. Our community is very quick to judgment and very short on forgiveness. And, look, I don't understand the circumstances behind this. I don't think it was malicious. I think they were just doing what they thought was right. They didn't really give much thought to it, and then it blew up in their face. And now they've quickly adjusted course, and they're doing what they should have been doing to begin with. But again, I don't know if that was just due to incompetence, short-sightedness, whatever. We don't know what led to all of this. I think the more concerning part for me is less about them giving the codes out, because I think the policy change is solid. I think that, for me, I could probably move past this given time. I don't know my next purchase if that would happen or not. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I'm inclined to see that they changed quickly and say, okay, look, they're trying to do the right thing here. But where I keep running into problems with all of this is the political donations. So
yes,
had that not come to light, assuming it's true, that for me is a much harder pill to swallow, right? Being of Christian faith, I try to forgive, right, and move on.
No, of course.
But boy, when somebody does something like that, now that seems as though they're maybe not as friendly to our beliefs, our Constitution, and where we stand as a group that they're serving, with their products. So that to me, again, is just a little tougher of a pill to swallow. And that's going to cause me more pause than everything else, I think, in this whole flap.
I could not agree more with what you just said. So just to reiterate from my perspective, I think that this is going to be a very large deal for them. I don't think this is going away quickly. I think this is going to get worse and worse and worse. And as time continues, it's going to honestly ferment. To be honest, it's just going to keep on going and getting more sour and more sour and more sour. And again, I do not like the fact that they just gave the codes to someone's safe when the entire point is to keep it safe from prying eyes.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. Even though, even they say, well, there was a warrant. Well, the warrant wasn't for you. It wasn't a court order. So it's not like they were saying, do this or else. They were saying, hey, buddy, could you help me out here? Because we got this thing and we need to get in. And I know you have the codes. And I know that internal policy. So, hey, can you email me that?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, sure. Just send proof of the warrant. They did. And then they did it. So the FBI knew, per their policy, that they needed the warrants. They probably had the warrant on a digital file ready to send right over. But the big problem I keep coming back to is you made this decision. Yes, you corrected the policy after you got caught and there's a firestorm, but then you got caught where your donations and where your where everything aligns to, where your political alignments are.
Yeah.
And that goes against everything that we put in those safes. And that's your core clientele.
Yeah.
It's just like so we kicked over some rocks. And again, if this is true, the allegations that are in here from the donations are damning.
Yeah.
Damning. I mean, that is really bad.
I do want to point out one more thing that I saw on Twitter that was interesting. Was a comment made by a random Twitter user saying, if Liberty Safe has these codes and they'll just give them out willy-nilly, then your safe that you've purchased for, thousands of dollars is no more secure than the safe you're going to find in a hotel room. Because the administration at the hotel room can access that safe anytime they want. If the police come to the hotel room and they say, hey, we want in that safe, they'll say, hey, come on in. Now, that's not your safe, that's not your property, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but what that guy was saying is pretty funny, because the analogy is pretty true, right? It's like, well, if somebody has my codes and they can wind up on the dark web, or they're going to wind up in the hands of law enforcement if they just knock on the door and ask kindly, then it's no more secure than the safe in the hotel room, which, all they got to do is come up and say, hey, we got a warrant, let us in that safe, and then the administration lets you in the safe. So, it's kind of a hot mess. It's something I think most of us were taken surprised by that own Liberty safes. And so I know I didn't. Mm-hmm. I was relieved to find out that it wasn't like some backdoor code that all safes could be accessed through. It was something you had to provide, and it's something I never provided to Liberty. So I was never really under threat of having them compromise my security in some way. It's just their policies, the fact they've probably done this before, they almost admit to having done this before, and then the political donations, it just, when you want to forgive, it just gets more and more tough when you find more and more stuff that these people have done that that would be concerning to anybody in the 2A community or the constitutionalist community or anything. Freedom community.
Well, or anything, right? Yeah. Freedom, America, Americans. But I think that's the big bow on it. You've got now a tarnishment of your brand of being a liberty-loving company and a safe that you can actually have as a safe. It's not a safe anymore. Now it's a revolving door that's just heavier. And it's like, well,
it's communal property. It's only those who have the keys. You don't really know who has the keys. And it's like Musler Gold chairs. Somebody different can wind up with the keys tomorrow, depending on a piece of paper they show up with. So, yeah.
Right, but it's not. But it's. I want to say one more thing that you just said, because you said it a couple times. There's one thing about forgiving a company. I understand that forgiveness is a piece of it, but there's also a learning element there as well. I can forgive that you made a mistake and you made a bad policy. That doesn't mean I'm going to buy your product again, though. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I see you. You came out, you said you messed up, you tried to correct it. Although I'm looking at the entire picture, and that doesn't necessarily guarantee that just because I forgive what you've done means I'm going to support you in the future. Mm-hmm. There's a very fine distinction there, because forgiveness is one thing, endorsement is another.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I hate seeing that brand take on those like this because, like I said, I've been a customer for so long.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I'm sure we're going to follow up more on this because this has gotten into the whole this company's actually woke and here's the proof element on YouTube. So I don't think this is going anywhere. It's just replaced Bud Light, in my opinion.
What's crazy is it's gone out of the 2A community. It's gone more mainstream, and where you even have liberal commentators on Twitter, like the Krassenstein brothers. I can't pronounce the last name.
Krassenstein.
Yeah, I can't pronounce the last name very well. But they even posted about it and they're talking about it. Of course, they're making fun of the 2A community taking part in the cancel culture. But it's just interesting that it's crossed over into outside of the 2A community, and now everybody's talking about it. So it seems like it's just getting worse for Liberty until. At some point, I'm sure it'll blow over, but right now they're in the eye of the storm for sure.
Yeah, and it's a big one, it's a big one. But I think we put a nice bow on this.
Yeah, I think so.
We landed this plan.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. If there's another major development in this story, we'll obviously make another video and talk about that development. But anyway, let us know in the comments down below. What do you think about what happened with Liberty Safe? We will make links to various documents and websites and pages that you can go and do a little bit of digging if you're not familiar with the story, and then let us know, because I'm really curious how you view this entire episode and what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be part of the show, we can get you on the show by following the link in the video description below. And answer a few questions. We'll get you on the show. We'll talk about whatever 2A topic is on your mind. We'll have a good time in the process. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon.